All right, I am jumping your page 45. Start talking with number 25. Declare war on an establishment or an orthodoxy. Again, by the way, if you did not see Trump's Tuesday night teleprompter speech, I suggest finding it because it was brilliantly crafted. It's really worth seeing. He does an entire thing on, much more elegantly than I'm going to do, about how the whole government system is rigged to protect the people in it, and therefore you can't expect to send anybody who rigged it to go fix it. Therefore, this election, by the way, heads exploded again in Washington. This election is not about Republicans and Democrats at all. Forget political parties. This is about us and them. Oh, it was great. It was fabulous. And then he went into a pitch to Bernie's people why they should come over to him. It was just fabulous. I mean, it was just great. Because it is this. It is him again. So, okay, you establishment jerks want to push me around, I'll fix you. I'll give a speech and tell everybody none of you matter. How about that? Us and them. Brilliant. Brilliant. So this has been, which probably loops back, by the way, to what I said to you earlier. So this has been a big modus operandi of mine for a fairly long period of time, is throw grenades at an establishment of something. Because it's a fairly safe bet in almost every environment that there is a significant percentage of people who are there because there's really no place else to go, but they hate the establishment that is running the there, or they have already concluded that the establishment that is running the there is a bunch of idiots. But it's the only place of its kind to go. So I mentioned earlier National Speakers Association. So starting in 1978, after I quickly determined the whole thing was run by idiots, I had, actually 1979, because 1978 I joined with some optimism. And so I had made about 108 grand that year. Doing it as primitive as, dumb and stupid, literally door knocking and cold calling, get speaking gigs. You can't be dumber. But I'd made over 100K. And so I went to the NSA Winter Workshop, optimistic that, geez, if I manage to grind out 100K stupid, right, if I get smart, imagine, right? And so by noon the first day, I'm pretty depressed. Because what I discover is 70% of the people are better at the technical aspect of the thing than I am. So they're all better speakers at this point. Because I sucked. So they're all better. But none of them knew how to make any money. And in the earliest conversations, I made the mistake of, hey, I know I'm doing this stupid, right? And I managed to grind out about 105 grand this year. So, and the conversation stopped there with, you did what? How did you grind out 105 grand? I'm going, well, this is not the conversation I was planning on having. This is not exactly how I thought this was going to go. So I took a lot of money out of NSA from members for a number of years by attacking NSA. Didn't win me any friends at NSA, by the way. A lot of them are old, so most of them have died. But there's a few who are still, pissed off. Well, there are. There's people that are genuinely pissed off. Some of them have carried a grudge for 30 years. It's just, But I've had that first job I had, the only job I ever had, this national sales manager of that company. 20 years after I quit, I saw him at the Book Expo, and he was still pissed at me. So I'm still pissed off at you. I said, oh, yeah. I didn't barely remembered you. What are you doing thinking about me? I'm not thinking about you. You know, when I left, I was mad at you too. But, 20 years. Chuck, it's okay. You son of a bitch, you. So here's what I immediately found as soon as I started to say, this whole NSA thing, they're wrapped to you guys of grovel for 10 years, and then maybe you can start to make some money. And for God's sakes, don't sell anything unless you beg for permission. And, start charging low fees. And you need to work with bureaus, so you have to be bureau-friendly, which means you have to kiss the ass of the 5 guys that own bureaus. That's what that means. Right? This really doesn't make sense, guys. This is stupid. And there's a better way. Well, there was already a bunch of people in there who were there only because it's the only there. But they were already thinking to themselves, I don't know, this doesn't make sense to me. It's the way everybody says to do it, but it doesn't make sense to me. And for the most part, they were the smartest ones there. They were business guys who were going, that doesn't make sense to me. They were just waiting for somebody to face them and say that. And so the more I crapped on the establishment, and I say the more money I made from the relatively small but still significant percentage who were really already there. They were just waiting, loop back all the way to this morning, for somebody to validate what they were already thinking. You know what? This doesn't make any damn sense. Right? And boom, they come. Chiropractic, when we had our own companies in chiropractic, I did exactly the same thing. Same game plan. For small business in general, who do I attack? Traditional advertising. Ad agencies, traditional advertising, image advertising. That's the establishment of advertising. That's what it is. 80% of all advertising is image and brand advertising. Only 20% is direct response. It is, incidentally, the 80-20 rule perfectly applied. The 20% is making more money than the 80, but that's neither here nor there. So the establishment of advertising is traditional brand and image advertising. From book 1, article 1, speech 1, I crapped all over it. And that works. So in almost every place, there's some orthodoxy that you can pick a fight with and that you can position yourself against. For salespeople, for me, it has always been sales managers. The suits at the home office. Who do salespeople hate? They hate their sales managers. They can't stand them. So, empathetic statements. All right, so if you go into No BS Sales book, I don't know what page it's on. I know what it is in the DM book. So the traditional advertising stuff, a good example of that's right on page 6. 3, 4, 5. Yeah. That's this one. By the way, this should look eerily familiar to the one I showed you in Ruthless Management before. So here's big company's agenda for advertising and marketing. And here's 7 stupid items, right? Appease the board, most of whom know zip about advertising and marketing but have lots of opinions. Appease the stockholders, look good, look appropriate to Wall Street, look good, look appropriate to the media, build brand identity, win awards for advertising, and finally, number 7 is sell something. Your agenda, sell something. Right? It's pretty much like the one I showed you in here. So, and the sales one, I don't know where it is, but there's a whole chapter in No BS Selling. You want to make a note when you get home. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? How to stop prospecting. 6, a BS that sales managers shovel onto salespeople. It's chapter 19. And then there's 5 different kinds of stupid shit that sales managers say to their salespeople. Like, it's just a numbers game, keep at it. Everybody's your prospect, et cetera, et cetera. So all salespeople, what they have in common is they hate sales managers. If they're in a big organization, they hate the ones at the home office, right? Because they just detest them. For good reason, by the way. I mean, it's legitimate. My empathy is, you know. So I had a 5-state territory. The office was in LA. I was here. We have snow here. LA, they don't have snow, you know. Chuck, first of all, how smart is this? You're on the phone with your sales guy in Ohio in winter, and you can hear the hot tub gurgling, right? What are you doing, Chuck? Oh, I'm in the hot tub. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What do you mean you're on a weekday? What do you mean you're in a hot tub, right? And now we're going to have a conversation of why I wasn't in 8 cities this week. Well, because there's 400 feet of snow. It takes a long time to get from one city to the other. This is not Anaheim. This is Ohio, you know. So I hated the guy. And every salesman hates their managers. Yet they are in charge, right? So in almost everything, there's some group, there's some establishment, the language being used now because of politics, that at least a significant percentage, if not everybody, of people that you want to influence detests and or thinks is incredibly stupid, or both. They detest them because they're incredibly stupid. That's like the best, by the way, from our standpoint. And so you want to figure this out, and you want to use it. When you pick enemies and villains, you're page 46. This is a really useful take-home. So there's 7 items enunciated there about using enemies and villains for your benefit. So one is that no movement ever rises without belief in a devil. So you need a devil. Secondly, the excitement, the movement is proportionate to the tangibility and vividness of the devil. So if they're vague and ambiguous, that's one thing. So everybody knows, for example, all salespeople know sales managers are idiots. But when I do a longer version of what I just did and personify it and describe Chuck, the sales manager who I worked for, that's more vivid. And then everybody can identify because they have one. 3, it's essential to have a tangible enemy, not an abstract one. They got to be able to see it, touch it, statistically understand it. I'll skip over 4. 5, this is important. The ideal devil is 1. So if there's more, you got to figure out how to tie them together and concentrate them together as one big devil that everybody can focus on. 6, and this is cool when you do this. So anything you do that doesn't work the way it's supposed to, that is visible in front of the people you have paying attention to you, it's not your fault. It's the fault of the devil who won that battle, which makes it all the more important for you guys to band together against this evil. So you now have a get-out-of-jail-free card for anything you do that doesn't work if you've done this well. And it is important that the devil ideally is an invader, is a foreigner from outside, not from inside. So here's Kia did the graphics. This is not a new idea, but so Walmart for retailers has been, for at least 10 years, a pretty reliable devil. And they qualify on almost every point, including foreign invader, because the time that people are most riled up about them is when they are opening a new store, is when they are invading an area. So we use them a lot. This is some stuff I'm doing in the pharmacy industry. So this is, will they eat you for lunch? And there's a picture of Walmart, and there's a picture of Rite Aid, and there's a picture of Walgreens and CVS. And are you the next casualty of big box discounters? Should you fear being Amazoned? The free report offer is the end of the independent pharmacy. They're a very reliable evil that can be beat up a lot, and retailers are right there because they blame all of their lack of success on this devil. They're just waiting to have you validated. Now, first of all, it's factually untrue in that if you take Walmart, for example, every time Walmart opens a new store, two things happen. Some area retailers die. Other ones do better than they ever did before because Walmart creates a lot of traffic. And Walmart stocks only stuff that large numbers of people will buy. They don't stock stuff that only small numbers of people will buy. So they create a host-parasite relationship for the ones that are smart enough to be in orbit around them but change the merchandise mix. So an independent hardware store, for example, can do real well even though there's a Walmart and a Home Depot in the same general vicinity if he knows what he's doing. So it isn't even true. It's only partially true. Right? They still have to volunteer to be victimized by their own behavior when Walmart comes in. Now, if they bend over, Walmart will give it to them. But that's theirs, really. It's not Walmart's, right? In healthcare, this is one of the few reasons I'm going to say this, but because I have clients selling to healthcare professionals, we will be sorry to see Obama go. Because as the devil behind Obamacare, he's been great. I mean, it's like gold, right? You wave him in Obamacare, and pretty much anybody in any healthcare business, their hackles rise, and they're aggravated, and they're pissed off, and they're scared, and they're frightened, and oh my God, what is going to happen next? And that's exactly where we want them to be. Right? He's also been really good, as you probably know, for the gun business. I mean, great. Every time he mouths off about something that has to do with guns, everybody runs out and buys a bunch of guns and ammo. He's like, I mean, gun shops actually have his picture up with a thing underneath, America's #1 gun salesman. I mean, I'm serious, they actually do, right? Not only is it unintended consequences, I assume, it's actually reverse consequences of what it is that he'd like to have happen. But, so these, and of course you see Trump doing this very effectively, creating a villain. His villains match the criteria I gave you here perfectly. I mean, perfectly. So whether it's instinctive or whether he got it out of the book, I don't know, but he does it very, very well. So most people think, so here's what all bad marketers, bad salespeople, bad advertisers, and bad copywriters always do, is they default to product or service, feature or benefit, price and offer, and some claim of comparative superiority. So I sell X, whatever X is. X has glow-in-the-dark feet, and that's a benefit because you won't fall down the steps. And X is $9, but if you order now, you get a second one free, just pay separate shipping and processing. And by the way, it's better than the other guy's X because it's made of palladium. That's what everybody, 90% of all advertising, marketing, and selling is this. If you pick anything, pick a magazine, watch TV for a night, I mean, that's what most of it is. And that's like the least important thing we could ever do. All this other stuff will move a lot more merchandise, right? And so when you create an evil or latch onto an evil they already know is there, and you make you're on their side in opposition to this dangerous and frightening and nasty villain who is coming to take them away in some way, shape, or form. And now here's how embedded this is. So most of what we're talking about today is going all the way to the point of triggering something that is deeply embedded in people's psyches. I've mentioned it a number of times. You should understand it's all about that. So here's what 100% of people have in common. There's not a lot that 100% of people have in common. Here's something all 100% of the people have in common. As children, there were boogeymen under the bed or in the closet. There was somebody coming to get them and hurt them or spirit them away, and they were scared of them. And usually a parent fixed it. That's deep in there. And so it's just waiting to be hit with a sharp pointed stick, and there it is again. So when you create a boogeyman under the bed, that you can be the crusading person on a wall. You can be the dad or mom who comes in, looks under the bed, makes sure they're not there, or lies to you and says, I got them. You don't have to worry about him anymore. I got him right here, and I'm dragging his little green, slimy ass out of here. Some parents do it that way. Some parents do it the other way. But most parents do one or the other. When you are that, you gain enormous advantage. And it has nothing to do with whether the hose is made out of palladium or not. I mean, we got to get there eventually. But the key word is eventually. Let's jump to 29, which is the bigger idea. So David Ogilvy, the great ad guy, one of his questions that he said he would often ask and get unsatisfactory answers to when people came to him with ads they had put together in the agency was, okay, fine, but what's the big idea of this? And when there's a big driving idea, it gets easier to sell stuff and to influence people. So in the, probably started post-World War II, 1950s. In homes for relatively middle class and up, you may have had one in a home when you grew up. They began to put in music rooms. And there was a room for music. This was driven by a huge amount of money spent for 3 years before it really became popular by the piano industry. So the piano industry had a concentrated lobbying, marketing, handing out goodies effort to architects, builders, media, everybody that would affect a home buyer, lobbying for the idea that there should be a music room. If you have a music room, what do you need? A piano, right? Now we don't have to sell pianos. People got to go buy pianos, and they do. More recently, what did all new big homes start to be built with? Theaters. Of course, you got to have a theater. Another big idea recently is called the man cave. You got to have a man cave. If you buy that big idea, oh, I got to have a man cave, well, you can't just have a cave. I mean, we're not the Flintstones, you know? I mean, even they had some rock furniture. You got to stock this thing with something, right? It's the new big idea, home office. You know how many people have a home office that don't do nothing? But you got to have a home office, right? So this big idea that becomes the driving force for all sorts of purchasing activity is another thing to try and think through in your own mind. How can I create a big idea that automatically drives interest in what it is that I sell? Right? So, as you know, I love fax machines. It's one of the few pieces of technology I like. By the way, there is an entire book called Fax, which is the entire history of the fax machine. I suspect I'm the only person who bought a copy. And why anyone would publish this is beyond me, but it is 300 solid pages of everything you ever wanted to know about a fax machine. So this guy was even more fascinated with them than I am. But many of you will not remember, there was a time when nobody had fax machines. Right? And they had to get FedEx actually tried a service called Zap, where they had fax machines in the trucks. And you could pay them to fax for you, because the problem, of course, is you had to fax to FedEx at the other end. And they had to deliver it because nobody had fax machines. So the service was sort of ill-conceived, because as soon as everybody got fax machines, the business was over. But so the big idea was instant. Hey, you could take this document and you could have it appear at the other end exactly like you got it here, like this. How many documents do you really have to have that happen with? Not a lot. I mean, next day was really sort of sufficient for most people's purposes, but instant became the big idea, right? I want it to be instant. And of course now, as you know, there's a whole plethora of things that arguably make this unnecessary, right? Way back, and still today, to a great extent. So, millions of new businesses get started every year. What is the one thing every new business owner does, and pretty much does as one of the first few things every new business owner does? Business card. Yeah, you got to have a business card. Why do you got to have a business card? Who says you got to have a business card? Right? The whole idea of business cards had to be popularized, and it became a big idea, and then it became kind of mandatory. If you don't have a business card, you're not like in business. By the way, how many of you got business cards? Good for you. I haven't had one in 20 years. I don't know why. And you just gave me, where's the coffee news guy? I don't have it to, oh yeah, I do. So you just gave me the brand new kind of, it's a business card that's also a cheap-ass version of a bobblehead. So it looks like this, right? But it stands up like this, right? So this little guy stands up, and then it's got stuff on the back, including "Don't call me." So he makes these, by the way. If you'd like yourself turned into a little doohickey, he's in that business. So after all these years, I now have a business card again. Thanks, Dan. I'll pay you later. Okay, but so business cards are so ubiquitous as a big idea that Vistaprint is able to advertise them on television. Television. Because everybody is accepted, you got to have one. It's the thing to do. When you get in business, this is what you do. For years, they've tried to make incorporation and LLCs the same. And they get closer and closer and closer, but still, it ain't to this point. So this is a big idea what you got to have. Now, what they have managed to do it with is a website. Most people believe you got to have one. And so if they don't do anything else, they go to one of the cheap services like one-to-one that you see them advertised on TV, and you can drop and load a picture, and there's 8 templates, and by the way, for a lot of people's purposes, these things are fine. Okay? But we've managed to get people to believe you've got to have a website. You guys all think you've got to have a smartphone. See, it's only a question of brand and model. Everybody's going to have one. The Rolls out there, by the way, Dean's Rolls in 1986, there's a car phone in there. An actual, a real car phone, which was a big friggin' deal in 1986. Nobody thought they needed them. It was like a luxury. Well, it would if I activated it. Yeah, I don't have it activated, but you could activate it. It'd work. So we accept these things that, okay, this is now a norm. This is what everybody around here does. This is what we've got to have. And so everybody does it. If you can figure out how to make that happen. Party plan selling in the 1960s, the Tupperwares of the world. This was an accepted suburbia activity, and you had to go. So ask your moms, some of you. A few of you got to ask your grandma.